Most men in age gap relationships are not in love with her. They are in love with who they become when they are around her. And that distinction, that single uncomfortable distinction, determines whether what they have will last a lifetime or quietly collapse under the weight of everything they never examined. What we're covering today is the psychological truth underneath age gap relationships that almost nobody discusses honestly. Not the surface questions about judgment from others, not the logistical questions about compatibility, but the deeper question that sits underneath all of those. The question about what you are actually looking for, and whether a relationship can genuinely provide it. One section covers the specific psychological trap that makes age gap relationships feel like destiny when they are sometimes something else entirely. Another covers what separates the age gap relationships that become deeply meaningful from the ones that quietly fall apart. And the climax, the final section, is the most important question you will ever ask yourself about love, at any age. Stay with me. Here is the honest premise. Age gap relationships are not inherently right or wrong. They are not inherently healthy or unhealthy. They are not the romantic fantasy that some people romanticize, and they are not the suspicious arrangement that others immediately question. They are, like all relationships, containers. Containers for genuine human needs, genuine human fears, and genuine human longing. And what determines whether they thrive or fail is not primarily the number of years between two people. It is the quality of self-awareness each person brings to the container. Today we go there, completely honestly. 7 insights, real psychology. Let's get into it. Bold claim. The most important psychological question about any age gap relationship is one that most men actively avoid asking because the answer makes them genuinely uncomfortable. And the avoidance of that question is where most of the problems begin. The question is this: if she were exactly the same person, same personality, same warmth, same intelligence, same specific way of making you feel, but a different age, would you feel the same way? Sit with that, really sit with it, because the honest answer reveals something important, not about whether the relationship is right or wrong, about what you are actually responding to, about whether you are drawn to her and specifically completely as the full human being she is, or whether you are drawn to how she makes you feel about yourself. Those are not the same thing, and confusing them is one of the most common and most costly mistakes available in human relationship. Here is the psychology. Research on attraction and self-concept consistently documents that we are often attracted not just to people, but to the version of ourselves that exists in their presence. The more confident version, the more hopeful version, the version that feels younger, more alive, more significant. And when that version of ourselves is unfamiliar, when it contrasts sharply with the version we have been living with for years, the attraction to the person who produces it can feel overwhelming, life-changing, destined. What it actually is, in many cases, is relief. And relief, however powerful it feels, is not the same thing as love. Scenario: a man named Robert, 53, had spent 5 years in a marriage that had slowly, painfully drained his sense of self. Met a woman named Jade at a professional event. She was 31. She laughed at his observations. She asked about his history with genuine curiosity. She looked at him like he was someone worth paying attention to. He described it to his therapist as oxygen, like getting oxygen back. But his therapist asked a question that changed everything. What did your life feel like before she arrived? Robert went quiet for a long time. Underneath the excitement was years of accumulated grief, a marriage that had ended, dreams abandoned, a growing quiet terror that the most meaningful chapters of his life were already finished. Jade hadn't created those feelings. She was temporarily silencing them, and that specific distinction is the most important psychological difference available in age gap attraction. What most men do wrong, They interpret the relief as evidence of the relationship's rightness rather than examining what the relief was covering. What actually works? Before investing fully in any relationship that feels like relief, ask honestly what it is relieving you from. Not to disqualify the relationship, to understand it clearly, because clarity about your own motivations is the only foundation that produces genuine love rather than genuine dependency. Bold claim, many men in age gap relationships believe they are running toward a person when they are actually running away from something, and the difference between these two motivations determines everything about where the relationship eventually arrives. Here is the psychological truth. The human nervous system does not differentiate cleanly between the pull of genuine attraction and the push of avoidance. Both feel like movement towards something. Both feel like desire. Both feel, in the early stages, indistinguishable from love. What distinguishes them is what happens when the excitement settles, when the relationship becomes ordinary, when the specific daily reality of two people in different life stages, with different timelines, different dreams, different relationships to the future, becomes impossible to avoid. Running toward someone produces a relationship that deepens when it becomes ordinary, because genuine attraction to a specific person intensifies through genuine knowing, through the accumulation of ordinary mornings and ordinary conversations and ordinary frustrations that reveal who someone actually is underneath the performance of early connection. Running away from something produces a relationship that struggles when it becomes ordinary, because ordinary removes the specific quality, the relief, the contrast, the feeling of being seen anew that was providing the emotional function the person was actually seeking. Mini story. A man named Daniel, 48, had described meeting a woman named Alicia, 26, as the moment his life changed. Everything felt possible again. He felt more himself than he had in years. 2 years later, he was in his therapist's office, confused about why the relationship that had felt like his salvation was now producing more anxiety than peace. His therapist said something direct. You came into this relationship carrying things you haven't unpacked. And now that the excitement is settled, those things are still there. She didn't take them away. She was covering them. Daniel resisted this for months, then slowly, honestly recognized it as true. The relationship wasn't the problem. His unexamined reasons for entering it were. Bold claim. In many age gap relationships, the younger partner functions as an emotional mirror. Not intentionally, not manipulatively, simply through her presence. She reflects back to the older man a version of himself that he had stopped believing was accessible. Here is the psychology. When we encounter someone who sees us with fresh eyes, who has not accumulated the specific disappointed familiarity that long-term relationships sometimes produce, we can access parts of ourselves that familiarity had buried. The curiosity, the playfulness, the sense of possibility, the specific aliveness of being someone new to another person. And for a man who has spent years feeling gradually more invisible, more routinely known, more predictably processed, that fresh vision can feel genuinely transformative. Two things can happen when this mirror appears. A man can become grateful for it, or he can become dependent on it. Gratitude says, "This relationship reminds me that I am still alive." Dependency says, "I need this relationship to feel alive." Those two sentences sound similar. They lead to completely different destinations. Gratitude produces connection, dependency produces pressure, and no relationship, however genuine the love, survives indefinite pressure without breaking, because eventually the younger partner begins to feel responsible for carrying emotional weight that was never hers to carry, the weight of his self-worth, the weight of his hope, the weight of his feeling that his best chapters are still ahead rather than behind. And when love starts feeling like a responsibility, when being in a relationship starts feeling like emotional labor, even genuine love starts feeling heavy. Not beautiful, heavy. Bold claim. Every relationship, every single one, regardless of how powerful the beginning, eventually leaves the extraordinary and enters the ordinary. And age gap relationships have a specific, revealing way of testing what remains when the extraordinary fades. Here is the psychological reality. In the early stage of an age gap relationship, the differences between two people can feel genuinely exciting. Different musical references, different life experiences, different relationships to time and urgency and possibility. The unfamiliarity itself becomes a source of interest, but over time, those differences stop being occasional charming moments. They become daily realities. He is thinking about legacy. She is still building her foundation. He has already navigated the territory she is entering. She has not yet experienced the things that shaped his perspective. Neither person is wrong. That is what makes it genuinely difficult. If someone is wrong, the solution is simple. When both people have valid, incompatible needs, when one person wants stability and the other wants exploration, when one person is consolidating and the other is still discovering, the navigation requires something that attraction alone cannot provide. It requires genuine, ongoing, honest conversation about what each person actually needs, not the conversation they think they should have, the real one, mini story. A woman named Elena, 29, was describing something to a man named Marcus, 54, about where she wanted her life to go, the cities she wanted to live in, the risks she wanted to take, the experiences she hadn't yet had. She was animated, alive, completely genuine. And Marcus noticed something he hadn't expected to feel. Not jealousy, not resentment, something quieter and more complicated. A recognition that she was standing at the beginning of chapters he had already lived. He felt for the first time not like her partner, like her predecessor. That feeling, however uncomfortable, was information, not a verdict on the relationship. Information about the specific reality of significant life stage differences that genuine love cannot resolve through feeling alone. Bold claim, the age gap that causes the most difficulty in relationships is not measured in years. It is measured in self-awareness. And when two people are living at genuinely different levels of self-awareness, the tensions that emerge have almost nothing to do with how many birthdays separate them. Here is the psychology: self-awareness, the capacity to see yourself clearly, to understand your motivations honestly, to recognize the difference between what you want and what you need, develops through experience. But it does not develop automatically through age. It develops through deliberate engagement with your own interior life. A 50-year-old man who has never genuinely examined his own patterns, who has moved from experience to experience without reflecting on what those experiences revealed about him, brings less genuine self-awareness to a relationship than a 30-year-old woman who has been committed to understanding herself. And when one person in a relationship has significantly more self-awareness than the other, a specific dynamic emerges. The more self-aware person begins to see things the other cannot see, patterns, motivations. The distance between what the other person says and what they actually mean. The difference between what they believe about themselves and what their behavior reveals. That asymmetry of seeing more clearly than your partner can see themselves is one of the most quietly exhausting experiences available in relationship, and it has nothing to do with age. Bold claim, the age gap relationships that become genuinely meaningful share one quality above all others. And it is not compatibility. It is not passion. It is not even love in the conventional sense. It is the willingness of both people to eventually stop seeing each other as symbols and to start seeing each other as fully human. Here is the psychological truth. In the beginning, it is easy to project meaning onto another person. An older man becomes a symbol of stability, of wisdom, of the reassurance that there is a path through the complexity ahead. A younger woman becomes a symbol of possibility, of fresh beginnings, of proof that the most alive chapters are not yet finished. Symbols are easy to love. Human beings are not. Human beings disappoint. Human beings have bad days. Human beings carry wounds that don't disappear because someone loves them. Human beings need room to be flawed, complicated, and genuinely themselves. The age gap relationships that survive, that become genuinely deep, genuinely mutual, genuinely lasting, are the ones where both people eventually stop relating to the symbol and start relating to the person, where the age difference becomes background noise rather than the organizing principle, where what remains is mutual respect, genuine curiosity about who the other person is continuing to become, and the specific willingness to keep choosing each other through ordinary life rather than only in extraordinary moments. This is the truth reveal, the deepest insight, the one that everything else has been building toward. Bold claim, the deepest question in any age gap relationship, and the most important question available in all of human relationship, is not about compatibility or timing or life stage alignment. It is about what you are actually looking for underneath all of those things. And here is the honest answer most men never let themselves reach. You are not looking for youth. You are not looking for excitement. You are not even looking for love in the way the word is usually understood. You are looking for the experience of being genuinely seen, not the image, not the reputation, not the role you have been performing for decades, the actual person underneath all of that, the one who gets tired, who doubts himself, who carries private fears he has never said out loud, who occasionally wonders if he has done enough with the time he has been given. That person, the one nobody applauds. And here is the deepest psychological truth. Being seen by another person, however powerfully, however genuinely, is not the same as seeing yourself. A man can spend years receiving genuine admiration while still feeling empty, years being deeply loved while still carrying the specific loneliness of a person who has never fully made peace with himself. Years in the most romantic relationship available, while the fundamental questions about identity, about meaning, about who he is when nobody is watching, remain unexamined, because those questions are not relationship questions. They are identity questions. And identity questions cannot be solved by another person. They can only be explored alongside one. The healthiest, most genuinely loving relationships do not function as escape routes from the self. They function as environments in which genuine self-examination becomes safer and more possible, where two people bring their full, complicated, imperfect humanity into the connection, their strengths and their fears and their unresolved grief, and allow the other person to do the same. No pedestal, no fantasy, no expectation that the relationship will perform psychological miracles that only genuine self-examination can create. Just honesty. Messy, imperfect, deeply courageous honesty. Imagine sitting across from the person you care about most. No labels, no outside opinions, no noise from anyone who isn't in the room, just the two of you. And ask yourself honestly, if everything symbolic disappeared, if all that remained was character, conversation, genuine mutual respect, emotional safety, would I still choose this person? Would I still feel drawn to them? Would I still want to build a life alongside them? If the answer is a deep, honest yes, not the yes born of relief or fear of loss or attachment to the feeling they produce in you, but the yes of someone who has genuinely seen another human being and chosen them completely, then you are already asking the right questions. Because meaningful relationships do not survive on fascination. They survive on truth. Truth is quiet. Truth is not flashy. Truth sits with you after the excitement fades, after the extraordinary becomes ordinary, after appearances change and life becomes what it actually is. And perhaps that is the most remarkable thing available in mature love. Not that it makes you feel younger, not that it makes you feel powerful, not even that it makes you feel happy every day, but that it slowly, gently, persistently invites you to become more honest, more self-aware, more genuinely yourself. And in the end, perhaps that is what everyone is actually searching for. Not someone who helps you escape yourself, someone who makes it finally safe to meet yourself. Here is the question I want to leave you with tonight. Are you in your relationship or in your attraction to your relationship? Are you drawn to the person or to the feeling the person produces? That question is not a verdict. It is an invitation to examine yourself with the same honesty you would want from anyone who genuinely loved you. Drop in the comments. What is the most honest thing you have ever admitted to yourself about why you were in a relationship? I read every single one, and if tonight's conversation felt like something you needed to hear, something you have been circling around for a while, subscribe. Every week we have conversations this honest about love, identity, and what it means to show up genuinely for yourself and the people in your life. See you in the next one.